Hey everybody, this is Sigmund Bloom. I got a great show in this week with our friends at the IDP Show. We're going over some Week 16 matchups and plays. Check it out. I think you will like it.
We stand on the precipice of Week 16, the semifinals of the fantasy football playoffs. Win this week, and greatness is within our grasp. How about we help get you over the hump? That and more this week on the IDP Blitz.
Let's go. Hands up, get ready, it's the IDP Show with the Footballguys and Sigmund Bloom, you know how that goes. This ain't your typical, we deliver the hard fast. This is the dopest fantasy football podcast. It's when I go home, everything's at risk. Welcome to something new, it's the IDP Blitz. When I go home, everything's at risk. Welcome to something new, it's the IDP Blitz.
Josh here with Adam and Bobby from the IDP Show, joined this afternoon one last time by the legend Sigmund Bloom of Footballguys, doing a Week 16 preview for your fantasy football semifinals. Stick around to the end of the episode as we'll share some of our favorite starts at DL, DB, LB, and pay homage to the Audible with our own What the Heck flex picks. Gentlemen, we've got a lot of players to go over in this episode, so let's jump right into it. Sig, Merry Christmas, my friend.
Merry Christmas.
As our guest, we will tee you up first here. Who is your DL start for Week 16?
Yes, also Happy Hanukkah. Kwanzaa's coming. And most importantly, January 6th, Epiphany, Carnival's going to start. Get your king cakes. Come on down, everybody. So Deshaun Williams, mental Freudian slip there. We saw this, was it Shelby Harris a few years back, guys? Like a sort of defensive tackle, defensive end / player for Denver, make himself a lot of money, really start to come on. I think in the last 3 weeks, Williams has a 2-sack game and a 2.5-sack game. We saw Baker Mayfield get sacked 5 times last night by the Packers. And there's a name everybody should know that isn't. We're hearing a lot about Nathaniel Hackett, right? Nathaniel Hackett. By the way, the problem is he's too nice. He wants to be everyone's friend. That doesn't work when you're an NFL head coach. But their defensive coordinator, Ejiro Evero, remember that name. And when you hear that a team is interviewing him to be their head coach, that's a smart team. The Denver defense has been playoff quality this year, if you haven't noticed. What would their record be, guys, if they had scored 18 points a game? If they scored 18 points in every game, I think they might have lost 2 games this year or something like that. So that defense has been playing at that level throughout. And they're going to get to face, on Christmas, they're going to get to face Baker Mayfield. It's the Nickelodeon game, so maybe Baker will get slimed.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's another thing. Start DeShawn Williams so you have an excuse to see what they got in the Nickelodeon bag of tricks this year.
Yeah, we want to start DeShawn Williams just so we have an opportunity to see him get slimed, Addy.
Yeah.
One of your favorite games, especially I think the young kiddos always enjoy the Nickelodeon game.
I wish they did more of it. I wish we got one like every week.
That'd be fun. That would definitely get the kiddos into it, Bobo, if there was slime and SpongeBob was involved. And
wasn't the player of the game, Mitch Trubisky last year?
Yes, it was.
Which was adequate.
It was amazing.
Like his best award.
Yeah, truly.
Right.
The career
on his
highlight.
Wikipedia page, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That is a sick one to have.
That is a nice one to add to the trophy
Tom
case.
can't say he's got that one.
Yeah,
I got to be honest, boys. When Sig sent us this pick here, Bobby and I were doing a little looking up before the episode started of who is this DeShawn Williams character. But Eddie, it just kind of proves the point of like this time of year. We talked a little bit about it last episode. It's the war of attrition, right? It is who is available, who's left. And you always talk about who's playing well right now, not who played well at the start of the season, who's highest in the total points scored. We like to look at, and we're going to pull a lot of stats here in this episode. Since week 10, Sig mentioned that, 4.5 sacks for DeShawn Williams, and he gets Baker Mayfield and the Los Angeles Rams. What a Christmas gift that is.
Yeah, sign me up. We saw last night. Yeah, expect more of the same.
Yeah, so let's move on here. I will tee us up for the next one here. My pick, a little bit of bias, I'll admit. As a Colts fan, I got the ugly sweater on for an ugly Colts season today. But a player who has not been ugly for IDP. Kwity Paye is my pick going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Kwity Paye has quietly been very good in his last 3 healthy games. 71% of snaps, 3 sacks, 22 tackles. This would be week 9, 13, and 15. He's been a little banged up. Those are the last 3 full games that he played. 20.6 points per game by Big 3 scoring over that span. 10% pressure rate. The average for edge defenders is about 9.2. I mentioned he plays the Chargers, who give up the 7th most points per game to opposing defensive ends. Their pass blocking grade from PFF ranks 23rd, so this is a below average pass blocking line. They have a 24% pressure rate and a 10% sack conversion rate. So the big play upside, absolutely there with Kwity Paye. But I also really like his tackle floor, Addy. 7 per game over his last 3 healthy games.
Yeah, Kwity Paye's been fantastic this year. Dynasty-wise, what do we think? Is Kwity Paye a top 20 option for you at edge?
What about this, Josh? Kwity Paye or Azeez Ojulari?
Boy, that's a great question.
That class last year shaping up pretty nice.
I was going to say
Kwity, Jalen Phillips, the God.
Yeah, I was going to say those are probably the 3 hot names right now, right? Because with Odafe Owe kind of falling off, Joe Tryon Shoyinka falling a little bit, Kwity Paye has definitely surged. I think... Boy, that's really tough. I think probably Kwity Paye by a nose because Kayvon Thibodeau, I think, is about to go next level. So you're about to see a really nice
Walker too. They're starting to use Trevon Walker the right way, even though he got hurt. I'll say this on Kwity Paye and his dynasty prospects. A couple weeks ago, John Norton, gave me a 1st round pick for him, and I have Nick Bosa and Max Crosby. So I was like, okay, yeah, I'll take. But if John Norton's saying I'll spend a 1st round pick for him, pay attention.
Yeah, it's always when, like, in our league, we have John Macri, and anytime Macri comes calling for somebody, I'm like, what does he know about this defensive player?
It's his job.
Yeah,
look at stats all day.
The guy whose job it is to look at PFF numbers all day and think about IDP, 1st round pick for Kwity Paye is pretty nice, Addy, and I think he will be a nice start for you in the semifinals as well. Let's tee up your choice for DL start of the week. Who you got?
I'm going with Khalil Mack playing your coach this week, Josh. Should be a great game script for him. No Jonathan Taylor. I expect the Chargers to get up big early, which will force the Colts to pass if they want to hang around. So I think Mack will have plenty of pass rush opportunities to make big plays. The Colts O-line ranks 26 in pass blocking, according to PFF. They have allowed the 3rd most sacks and the 5th most pressures with 51.
That feels low. I thought we would be 1st in both of those categories, honestly.
I'm sure you will be. And I mean,
give it time.
Yeah, you're just 2 off, bro.
Give it time.
Yeah, 162 pressures they've allowed. That's 5th most. So, yeah, if you roster Mack, you're very aware of his recent struggles. Through the first 7 weeks, Mack racked up 6 sacks and averaged 15.7 points per game. However, weeks 7 through 15, that dropped to 7.8 points per game, and he's only managed 1 sack. One positive, though, even though the sacks and the points per game are down, his pressure rate actually got better. 10.4% weeks 1 through 7 and 12.9% weeks 9 through 15.
Better.
As we know, pressure and pressure rate is a good indicator of future sack success. So we like to see that. 73.7 PFF grade this year, 11.5 pressure rate on the season, 14.7 pass rush win rate. So this guy is not a bum. He's still bringing it. This is a great matchup. I know it's tough. I know he's been struggling, but I feel like we could see like a multi-sack game from Khalil Mack this week.
Yeah, Sig, that's a great question I'll tee you up on here. How do you balance this time of year a slumping player like Khalil Mack versus a primo opportunity like what he has against Matt Ryan in this offensive line?
Yeah, I think that we want to look at what teams have to play for, right? And what does Indy have to play for at this point? And Jeff Saturday, even preserving his job, that's probably not going to happen now. Like, let's give him, take the interim off of his label there. So, yeah. And the other thing you like to think about is in your mind's eye, goes back to DeShawn Williams and Baker Mayfield too. Just when you visualize the game, do you see a quarterback ducking down a lot? Do you see a quarterback unwittingly about to get sacked? And that's Matt Ryan, right? That's Matt Ryan in this game. The Chargers are pushing for a playoff berth. The Colts don't have much to play for. And I think absolutely you want a quarterback who's, fresh meat, sitting duck, and that has been Matt Ryan. We just didn't get to see it that much on Saturday because, well, they were ahead 33-0 at halftime, but I don't think they're going to be ahead 33-0 in this game.
Yeah, I don't think so either, Bobo. I expect to see a lot of Matt Ryan not running for his life because Matt Ryan cannot run anymore. Yeah, ducking for his life, cowering for his life maybe, but not running for his life.
And I think Matt Ryan was sacked 4 times last weekend.
That wouldn't surprise me. So, I mean, I saw the great photo of Braden Smith, his I think it's his right tackle, being pushed basically into his lap, and one of the old Vikings players was giving Matt Ryan an oil change. That was just summed up the Colts season right there, and the biggest comeback in NFL history. Matt Ryan has his right tackle in his lap, so I can absolutely picture Khalil Mack getting a lot of sacks against this Indy offense.
Is that in Indy?
I'm not sure, but
yes.
I don't. I don't. That even sets up even better. Even though I guess they would have been indoors either way if it's in LA. So let's tee up your start, Bobo, and this is a player very curious about because has not been that good this season. In fact, we've had a lot of conversations on this show about how he's been very frustrating. Who is your DL start for Week 16?
Yeah, so personally, I have to admit that I benched Josh Allen this week for Cameron Jordan. And Cameron Jordan didn't have a sack, and Josh Allen did on my bench. So that's kind of telling of my confidence in Josh Allen so far here lately. But I will say Josh Allen playing at the New York Jets. This is a Thursday game, so pay attention to that. But we're now 2 games into what's maybe a slight, rebirth for Josh Allen.
We
in
do nothing
2022.
if not motivate these slumping players.
And I really crapped on Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker here in the last couple weeks. I think I talked about Trayvon Walker in the same light as Clelin Ferrell.
Yes, you did. You threw him under the bus and then backed that thing up.
He was really playing poorly. But I do agree with Sig. I think they are using Trayvon Walker in a little bit better way here in the last couple games. But anyways, like I said, Josh Allen sacks in the last 2 games. His Jags play this week, like I said, on Thursday in New York. But they are surging towards their first playoff berth in a long time, probably since the Blake Bortles days. The Jets actually gave up 4 sacks for 30 yards in Week 15 to the Lions, where Romeo Okwara played 24 snaps and had 2 sacks. Somebody that I think I will talk about here in a little while. But I don't really want to get into too much of the PFF and the stats and stuff of this one. A little bit kind of indicative of what Sig was mentioning earlier. We're to the point in the season to where I don't want to overthink it. There's 3 things I'm thinking about. Player studs. I'm seeing a lot of questions on Twitter. Do I start Josh Uche or Devin White? You start Devin White in Week 15 and in Week 16 and in Week 17. The number 2, play matchups you like. If you have a matchup you like, if Matt Ryan is going to continue to be the Indianapolis Colts quarterback, play your defensive lineman against him. And start players on teams fighting for a chance to dance. So the Jaguars got a little bit of juju going on. That game was electric in Jacksonville this last weekend. They're trying to get to the playoffs. I'm going to start as many players as I can with teams that are playing with something to play for, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
And Josh Allen, I'm back on board.
All right, Sig, that's there are certain factors, right? It's like the idea dance with the girl that you brought or that brought you in the case of the playoffs. So don't leave her standing on the wall, as Bobo likes to say. And we can tell matchup data. We can look at, pass blocking, how good is the offensive line. But this factor we've touched on a little bit, teams playing for something. Jacksonville definitely checks that box. They are surging toward a playoff berth. I believe they control their own destiny. Win and in for the Jacksonville Jaguars. How much do you weight that as you are making these start-sit decisions in the fantasy playoffs?
I think you have to weight that because I think that especially when we're looking at sacks and big plays, you just want to get a wave where a team is pouring it on, right? I think Tampa Bay and Arizona is another good game to look at this week where you have asymmetry in what the teams have to play for. And just there could be an avalanche where it gets worse and worse, especially if Trace McSorley is starting, which he should be. So those are some of the things that you like to look at when you have those matchups between a team that's playing for nothing and a team that has a lot to play for. And I'm not saying it always bears out that way, but I do think we can see that tilt where it comes to motivation. And also we see teams get motivated. Like Houston's going to be really interesting to watch against Tennessee because they have gotten up for these last 2 games against 2 very good opponents. But how much gas do they have left in the tank? Because we see teams sometimes have that little burst, like the death scene where you pop back up like, oh, I've got one last swing of the sword in me. And then So we're watching the trajectory of these teams emotionally to know who's already making their tee times for January. Well, mid-January.
Sig, and this is something that I've been meaning to ask you for a while as well. This is something that I've really focused on, especially this year. If a guy's questionable, I am really hesitant to start said player, offense or defense.
Yeah, well, I think what we're seeing now, remember, y'all, we had probable eliminated as a tag a while back. Remember that? We used to have probable.
Yeah.
And what's the point of probable? What was the point of probable? I guess he's not 100%, but he's expected to play. So now you have all of these different injury designations. We have so much shadowy injury information, right? Especially when we have those midweek downgrades. So we don't know. I've always liked to say that if we could transport ourselves into NFL players' bodies during the season and see the pain and other conditions they have to play with, we would be shocked. We would be utterly shocked. And you're right. So simple rules, simple high-level sorting rules. Why would you want to play somebody who's hurt? Why would you want to play somebody who the team is telling you he's not 100%, and nobody's 100% at this time of year? But absolutely, oftentimes in hindsight, you can feel like you overthought things because you're trying to find reasons to play somebody when it's staring you in the face that the team is telling them. And now look, if it's a player who has still been performing with the same injury and they're nursing the same injury, I don't want to make a blanket rule here, but I think that this is a pretty simple high-level sorter that if a player is not 100% and you have an option who hasn't been on the injury report, that's why one of the most important things to watch, guys, is on Friday when they take the biggest difference you'll see is the difference between players who are questionable, but we know they're going to play, and players who are taken off of the injury report on Friday. That you're all clear. So those are things very important as we get up to Saturday this week, all the games on Saturday, the main slate. Watch those Friday injury report for players that are taken off of the injury report, even though they've had limited practices. Guys, sometimes we'll see someone go no practice, limited, and not on the injury report. I think with Najee Harris a few weeks ago. That's the team telling you he's good to go.
There you go. Addie, a lot of different rules that we try to keep in mind, but especially with not only Thursday games, but Saturday games, Sunday games, players getting more and more injured. They're not getting like healthier. They're just getting less and less, perhaps, maybe recovering enough from these injuries as we go along. So paying attention to that stuff, incredibly important here as we're making those start-sit decisions.
Yeah, they're running into other grown men as fast as they can.
Exactly. Sig said if you could transport yourself into an NFL player, I would just be dead. My body would not be able to take that level of pain.
No one here is making it through an NFL game.
I'm not making it through probably one NFL hit. Bobby maybe.
Bobby would.
Bobby probably has the
he's slippery.
Pliability.
He'd avoid the contact.
Yes, he absolutely would just duck and dodge. So let's tee you up here, Sig, on your next start. Let's move to the DB category, and you are going with a very interesting name because, again, sort of like Josh Allen here, not had the hottest streak to end the season. So I'm curious to see what you have to say about your DB start of the week.
Yeah, I like Rashaan Evans. I'm sorry, DB start of the week. Oh, oops! Spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
Talanoa. Sorry, because I'm going through levels of the defense. My brain still organizes these things as levels of the defense. Talanoa Hufanga, who's he's whatever war weapon you want to compare him to, right? A grenade, a heat-seeking missile, an IED. He's all those things in one because he's that player in the San Francisco defense that is the free radical who can make things happen. And he's that player who on one play, we saw him, remember his pick six earlier this year? I mean, he can change the game on one play. And you're seeing Washington now in a desperate situation now that they lost to the Giants. Going up against a San Francisco defense, I think we can say if you've been watching San Francisco the last few weeks, they're playing about as high a level of defensive football as you can. So you've got that chaos. You can't establish the run. You can't have time to throw downfield. You basically can't do anything that you want. You know who doesn't care about that? Taylor Heinicke. Taylor Heinicke is going to just hang in there and try to do something. And Taylor Heinicke doesn't mind throwing ill-fated football. Taylor Heinicke is going to go down swinging. That, to me, is a recipe as a San Francisco team that's trying to get that number 2 seed. They're trying to push. And at least if the Eagles get knocked off, let's assume the Eagles are going to get the number 1 seed. So San Francisco still has a lot to play for. And remember, they're trying to meet up with Jimmy Garoppolo further up the way in the playoffs too. So this team still has big time Super Bowl aspirations. Washington's hanging on for dear life. I think we can see Taylor Heineke can be overmatched at times, even though he's been a really good story for the Commanders. So Hufanga is one of those players that could, not a game-ending pick six like Rashaan Jenkins, but I think a pick six or a sack fumble on a blitz, those kinds of plays are definitely in play for him this week.
Yeah, the 49ers, very similar to the Bronco-led Peyton Manning Super Bowl team, where that defense
has
just
been
carried Peyton.
And that's a good point, Addy. Hufanga is a big play waiting to happen. I think of him like a battle axe just being thrown from distance, right? Just kind of swooping in to take someone's head off. And that may be Taylor Heineke. He does throw some YOLO balls. He's thinking about getting those Jordans in the color of the opposing team. And I think that Hufanga could be the beneficiary, like Sig said, of an interception, a big play. We know he has that in him at least.
Yeah, it's just a great matchup, and he always carries that big play upside with him. But yeah, I mean, I think Washington is 8th in rushing attempts this year. So, I mean, they're going to try and pound the rock. And then like Sig mentioned, Heineke's going to take chances and he will test that secondary. So yeah, I like that call.
All right. Well, let's keep us rolling here with my DB start of the week. We are going to the aforementioned Eagles game against the Cowboys, and I am going with a Cowboys safety, Jayron Kearse. This pick for me, we talked about it earlier. It's an example of pay attention to what IDPs have done recently. Donovan Wilson is the leading scorer from this Cowboys safety group, but he's not been the leader in the clubhouse since week 10. That would be Jayron Kearse. 90% of snaps, 13.16 points per game since week 10. He's leading this group in snaps. Over that span, Wilson is at 80%, Malik Hooker is at 71%, and he's leading in points per game. Wilson is 8.82, and Hooker is 6.6. Again, Jayron Kearse at 13.16 points per game over that span. He's playing the Eagles, who allow the 5th most points per game to opposing safeties. So, Addy, in a plus matchup for safeties, I'm picking the safest option of the bunch, and that would be Jayron Kearse.
No LVE this week either, right?
That's right. It sounds like some sort. It wasn't a Leighton Vander Neck injury, Bobo, but sounds like LVE might be out this week. So
also if you're feeling frisky, maybe what the heck flex is Damone Clark. That could maybe work out for you. He had, I think, 9 tackles last week, which was his career high so far. But yeah, he'll get a bigger opportunity for sure going forward.
Yeah. All right, Addy, I'm just going to keep the camera on you. Why don't you tee us up on your DB start of the week?
Okay, I'm going to go with Kyler Gordon. He's playing Buffalo this year. We all know how much Eberflus valued the slot corner position when he was in Indy, and that has stayed the same in Chicago. They spent a 2022 second-round pick on Kyler Gordon. Gordon has 428 slot snaps, 186 snaps at corner, 96 box snaps, and 12 on the line. I love those box snaps and DL snaps. That is the exact type of usage we see from guys like L'Jarius Sneed, Kenny Moore. He has recorded at least 6 tackles in 6 of his 12 games this year, and he has proven to have a knack for making plays. He has 2 picks, 4 tackles for loss, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. He is averaging 10 points per game and 5 tackles per game this year. He should be lined up with Stephon Diggs a decent amount. Stephon Diggs is playing 34% of his snaps in the slot this year, so I would expect Gordon to receive a decent amount of targets. Either way, the Bills have allowed the 3rd most fantasy points to cornerbacks this year, so love this matchup for Gordon. He's been a great pick for them, too. It's nice to see him on the field and producing for him.
Yeah, one of those building blocks for the team. Sig, I wanted to ask you, we've talked a lot about this season. A lot of us play in leagues that are CB required.
Yeah.
And Gordon's a great start there. But in DB leagues, how have you approached starting cornerbacks versus safeties in a league like Sleeper where it just has the DB designation?
You almost always want to go with safeties just because of the tackle opportunity. There are some players that have multi-use eligibility, like Marcus Jones is an interesting guy coming on now, especially if you get return yards. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was a hack. That was a cheat code for leagues where you start a cornerback who he's basically a deep safety that you could start at cornerback because of position designation. That being said, there are those cornerback matchups earlier this year when teams weren't throwing away from Tariq Woolen yet. Even Charvarius Ward would be a good one. Like, is there a cornerback who I might start this week? Charvarius Ward absolutely would be one I would consider, especially depending on your interception and pass defended scoring and things like that. But safeties are going to be in the mix a lot more often, and that's why you need to break out cornerback. It's not a real IDP league unless you have to start at least one defensive tackle and 2 cornerbacks, because that's what you have to do in a regular defense.
Yeah, that's what we like to say, Eddie. We like those leagues that mirror actual NFL defenses, so that's why we play in CB-required leagues. I've had Kyler Gordon on my main squad all year. He's been a fantastic. There are very few like plug-and-play options, but he's pretty darn close.
Yeah. And again, if you're looking for what cornerbacks to target when you have those defensive back leagues, it's the ones that play a lot of slot snaps, right? They're the guys that are closer to the line of scrimmage. Those are the guys that are going to be getting more tackles. That's why you see the L'Jarius Sneed, Teron Johnson, Kenny Moore. All those guys are up there in tackles among defensive backs.
Yeah, I believe L'Jarius Sneed, last I checked, Bobo, was still leading all DBs in points by Big Three scoring this year.
He's over 100 tackles at this point.
Incredible season.
I have to check and see. He's got to be. Yeah.
So let's, go ahead, Sig.
I was just going to say, I think Jalen Ramsey was also, Sneed and Ramsey are maybe the vanguard of a new role on defense that may have us rethinking that distinction between cornerbacks and safeties, especially when it comes to IDP. And we're also always waiting, how likely is this guy to make a play when the game puts the spotlight on him for that play, like talent and quality. So when you have an intersection like that of Sneed or Ramsey, where the team is trying to almost explicitly put him in a role where he's around the ball, right? Because it used to be we had shutdown corners and almost like a chess game. If you could trade a shutdown corner for number 1 receiver and take those 2 pieces off the board, then defensive coordinators were satisfied with that, like they can make adjustments on the other side of the field, bracket a receiver on the other side of the field or something like that. But now I think teams might be rethinking, well, if it's one of our most outstanding players with great ball skills and instincts and understands how to diagnose a play at the snap based on the personnel formation, et cetera, why do we want to maroon him out by the sideline where he can't influence the play? So I think that's just something to watch as the game continues to be in motion, where defensive coordinators are trying to create roles so that their best players are around the ball more often.
Yeah, evolution of the game, Bobo. You love to see it. And wanted to cue you up here on your DB start of the week, because one of our tried and true rules for IDP is availability. And last I checked, this player had been playing 100% of snaps on the season. We are going back to Seattle in a very favorable matchup. Who is your start of the week for week 16?
So this is so gross, right? Defensive back has been so terrible this year. If somebody had told us before the season, we're sitting here talking about who are your top 10 DBs or safeties, whatever, going into the year, who thought that any of us would talk about Kyler Gordon, Jayron, Kearse, maybe Hufanga if you're, feeling spicy, or Quandre Diggs for the Seattle Seahawks playing the Kansas City Chiefs this week. Mainly my rationale here is the Kansas City Chiefs. I know Ryan Neal was questionable going into last week. I don't exactly know how many snaps that Neal played. I haven't looked that up. I think he had a couple tackles, but Diggs had a pretty decent game. But like we talked about in the episode so far, both teams are still fighting to either make the playoffs or position themselves for some type of home field advantage down the way. Quandre Diggs is coming off of a 7-tackle and 1 pass defense game, which, while that's not super fantastic, that was against the Brock Purdy-led 49ers. And no disrespect to you Purdy lovers out there, but he is not Patrick Mahomes. Honestly, what this boils down to, I like the volume. The Kansas City Chiefs are they're playing okay ball, but at Houston, that was probably a little bit of a scare for them this last weekend. So I expect a better game. I expect more volume out of Patrick Mahomes this week. And honestly, if you have any defensive backs there in Seattle that you feel like starting, Tariq Woolen, Ryan Neal, Quandre Diggs, I'd start them all, because that has been a good recipe throughout the season.
Yeah. Kansas City, a nice matchup to target. Adding Quandre Diggs, maybe not a name that we are thinking about, but that just shows the power of some of these matchups that we like to target. So there we go. Quandre Diggs, Kyler Gordon, Jayron Kearse, and Talanoa Hufanga.
I did want to say, Josh, that
Yes, Bobo.
L'Jarius Sneed has 87 tackles on the year, so he will have a 100 tackle season.
He'll hit 100. You'll love to see it. He has been amazing this season. Sig, you dropped the spoiler a little earlier, but we can discuss it now in full. Your linebacker pick for Week 16, Rashaan Evans. Speak on it, my friend.
Yeah, this one is pretty simple. How many guys, what would be a good over-under for rush attempts for the Ravens this weekend? 38?
I was going to
40,
say 35
60,
plus.
all of them.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah, that's Rashaan Evans' music. I mean, he's an old school thumper, and he's going to be on the field. This is the kind of game script. And the other thing is we're going to watch the weather. Everyone stay warm this weekend. Do what we can to help the people out there who might not have a place to get out of the cold this weekend, because it's going to be rough. And the winds, more than the temperatures, the winds. As of right now, Chicago and Cleveland. So you got New Orleans and Cleveland. If we knew who the linebacker was to start for Cleveland, maybe we could do something with that, right? My point is that these games are forecast right now with like 25, 30-mile-an-hour winds. You just can't pass in that kind of weather. You just can't. So Baltimore wants to run the ball that many times anyway. Their weather might not be as bad, but we're watching that weather system. The winds may affect. So just putting this out there for folks. Cincinnati and New England and Foxborough, Atlanta and Baltimore, Houston and Tennessee, Nashville could be affected by these winds. And there's one other one I'm forgetting. Oh, Pittsburgh, Vegas and Pittsburgh, the 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. So those are the games that we have to watch the forecast, but there could be prohibitive winds for the passing games there. Baltimore doesn't care anyway. They don't want to pass. And Buffalo, Chicago. So that'll be interesting with Kyler Gordon. Although if it's short range passing, the slot corner, the player closer to the line of scrimmage, who you want anyway. So Buffalo, Chicago, New Orleans, Cleveland, those games look like you can really, I'm sure there's games folks remember from Cleveland. Like there was the game that Antonio Gates, I think, had an 80-yard touchdown, but otherwise there was no offense through the air. That one had some snow on the ground. So you can look ahead to these game scripts and you want your run stuffers. And the scoring system matters too. You know, big play leagues versus tackle heavy leagues in scoring. But it wouldn't be surprising at all to see some of these linebackers in these games that are going to be run heavy, rack up 15 total tackles, 10 solos. And it's just as simple as forecasting the game script and seeing who's going to be in the middle of the action because of it.
Yeah, Addy, Rashaan Evans has been one of those unsexy picks for your IDP lineups each and every week. And Ravens coming to town. Going to be, like Sig said, a cold weather game. What's not to like? I think we could see Rashaan Evans with about over under 58 tackle opportunities in this game.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're looking at, since week 8, Rashaan Evans is averaging 17.1 points per game. That is 5th best among linebackers. So you need to shift the way you're thinking. Rashaan Evans is a top 5 option now. Even if you're choosing between Rashaan Evans versus Devin White, give me Rashaan Evans at this point. Devin White's been kind of meh. He's been like an LB2 the past month pretty much. So same thing with like Josie Jewell, Dre Greenlaw. Like those guys are must starts now. Like those are top 5 options.
Yeah. Yeah, we say starts your studs, but like
these
we
are
said,
your new studs.
Yeah, you have
to
to
change.
You have to shift. That's a good philosophy for like week 1, right? You don't want to get too cute, too smart. Right. We have no information to go off of. Well, now we have 15 weeks of information, so we need to shift how we think about these guys. Even though Josie Jewell and Rashaan Evans might not have been the sexy names to start the season, they sure are sexy now. And I'll bring up another sexy name here. My linebacker start of the week, Willie Gay Jr. versus Seattle. We're going back to the well with that matchup. Linebacker has been pretty chalky for the most part. There have been a lot of studs, full-time linebackers that have balled out as expected. We've mentioned a couple of the guys, the Zaire Franklins, the Josie Jewells, the Jack Sanborns of the world that have popped and earned their way into your lineups. You're going to start those studs, those guys playing well recently. So I wanted to dig into a group of part-time linebackers who don't need 85% of snaps to be productive and earn a spot in our lineups, which brings us to Willie Gay Jr. Since returning from his suspension, he's been a big play waiting to happen. 73% of snaps, 2 sacks, 1 fumble recovery, and a pick 6 since week 10, 17.63 points per game in that span. Playing the Seattle Seahawks, they allow the most points per game to opposing linebackers. the Seahawks, they're going to be scrapping to get into the playoffs. We talked about teams with something to play for. The Seattle Seahawks are at the very top of that list. The Chiefs are also fighting for that number 1 seed. So in the best possible fantasy matchup for opposing linebackers in a game that should produce a lot of offensive fireworks and maybe some defensive ones as well, I am riding with Big Play Gay Jr. Addy, Willie Gay is my start of the week.
It's a new nickname.
I was kind of workshopping it in the mirror all week, and I thought, let's bust it out. Why not? It's week 16,
I think you're
baby.
about to go viral, bro.
That's what we're hoping for. That's the only goal, Sig.
Yeah, Willie Gay's been amazing this year, right? I mean, you love to see them using 2 linebackers.
Yes,
and us being able to use 2 linebackers.
Scheme busters. We talked about it in the offseason. Nick Bolton, Willie Gay have officially broken the curse of the Chiefs linebackers, Sig, and it's been fun to see. I think kind of the larger point I want to make here is there is this group of part-time linebackers that we can dip into as reliable starters here in the semifinals of the fantasy football season.
Yeah, and Willie Gay, like you said, the Big Play Gay Jr. waiting, big play waiting to happen a la Hufanga. And I'm remembering right now that Rams game. Was it Rams Chiefs in Mexico City? The 54-51 game. Samson Ekubon, I remember in that game. The point is, you tell me, and it's going to be really cold in Kansas City, really, really cold. I don't think that's going to necessarily matter in terms of how the game is played. There's not a lot of wind forecast for that one. But it's going to get loose. I think this is a game you could easily forecast to get loose, much like the 34-28 game that Kansas City and Denver played a few weeks back when Willie Gay had one of the best pick sixes you'll ever see. One of the most athletic plays, not just athleticism, coordination. It was one of those plays. And I remember when the Chiefs took Willie Gay, and there's a role in Steve Spagnuolo's defense for a player like Willie Gay, who can blitz, who can drop back into coverage, who can be similarly how we were describing Hufanga, a wild card in the defense that makes that game-changing play. So it's definitely a high ceiling play. And I think you're right that this is a situation where we look at snap count and things like that, that gets us a little bit off the trail whenever we're looking for players that can make big plays, or otherwise players that are in position to make big plays by virtue of the role. So that's one of the things I love about Willie Gay is his role and his strengths as a player are married perfectly.
Yeah, great matchup, great role. Fun player, that one-handed interception, the pick six of Russell Wilson. One of my favorite plays of the season. I just so happened to have the TV on when that happened, so that was fun to watch. Addy, let's tee you up here on your start of the week, a player we should absolutely not forget about.
Dre Greenlaw versus Washington. Very good joke right there, Josh.
I'm got the dad jokes and the puns are in full swing here as we approach the holidays.
You are out of control. You're locked in.
Need to be reined in.
All right, so Dre Greenlaw, he is on an absolute tear right now. He's averaging 21 points per game over his last 5. That is number 1 among all linebackers over that stretch. He has scored double-digit fantasy points in 9 of his 13 games this year. His 86.1 PFF grade is second best among all linebackers, and his average depth of tackle is 4th best among all linebackers. So I guess we got to have a conversation. Does San Francisco have the best linebacking duo in the league? I think yes at this point. But also Washington ranks 4th in offensive plays per game and 8th in rushing attempts per game. They have given up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing linebackers this season. So yum, 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 yum.
Yeah, it's another example, Sig, of a situation where the number 2 linebacker on the team can actually be, a better option for us than the main option. And Dre Greenlaw, even though he hasn't played the amount of snaps that Fred Warner has, is just been perfectly put in this position to rack up fantasy points for IDP managers.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's the weak side linebacker, right? He's just given him more freedom to make plays, see ball, find ball, seek and destroy. So yeah, he's been playing outstanding football. He got a garbage time touchdown too, right, against Miami. So yeah, he's just been in the middle of the action. I know these are the kinds of things that analytics and so on kind of sneer at, but there is such a thing as a nose for the ball or instincts. Did you guys see? By the way, speaking of pick sixes, did you see Kyle Duggar's pick 6 last week.
Incredible.
Yes.
Oh my, reminded me of Troy Polamalu. And as a Pittsburgh guy, if I'm saying Troy Polamalu, like I've got to cross myself just like Troy
That's
Polamalu.
high praise.
Before every play, where I think they're just players that the game speaks to them. Right. I mean, they do visual information, and they're players also, they're great students of the game. So it's a combination of the game speaks to them, and it's studying formation and personnel sets, even understanding little things that an offensive lineman or a quarterback, there's things that they figured out, like if the running back puts his hands on his knees in the backfield, it's going to be a pass, but if he doesn't, it's going to be a run. And there's smart players. You saw Kyle Duggar, he knew something was up going into that play. I think Trey Greenlaw, I think San Francisco's defense, they're all just feeding off of each other right now. And that chaos that they create and swooping in and being the beneficiary. So yeah, that's really fun to watch. And Trey Greenlaw has just been a slam dunk lately.
I mean, he's surging in dynasty ranks now.
Absolutely.
Because he's also secured there, 2 years. I think they gave him, $30 million, something like that. Either way, I mean, you should feel pretty confident about Greenlaw for another 3 seasons.
It's
Absolutely.
approaching that Dre or Fred in dynasty type consideration.
Oh, it's a discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, Dre is 25 and Fred's 26.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's
And
Who
it
do
can
you
be
want?
and guys, it can be just as simple as like, are their roles fantasy friendly or not? Because I think if they switched roles, then Warner would be the one picking up the numbers. But Warner's more the quarterback of the defense. Warner's better in coverage, so he just has a role that takes him away from the ball a little more often, or he has more on his mind than Greenlaw. Greenlaw's just like, we were talking about Willie Gay. He's just set up perfectly to perform in a way that translates to the numbers we care about.
It's exactly that, Sig. I mean, it's eerily similar to Bolton and Willie Gay in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Yep. And think about this too. We mentioned the role being profitable for Dre Greenlaw. Well, we saw that with Azeez Al-Shaair in Dre Greenlaw's absence.
Yeah.
IDP MVP for a lot of our folks when we had that episode last year. So it's just a very profitable role. And Bobo, Addy brought up, is this the best linebacking duo in the NFL? I think for real NFL purposes, it is. But for fantasy purposes, there's another team with a dynamic duo, and you are pulling from that group for your LB start of the week. Who do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about Patrick Queen versus the Atlanta Falcons this week in Baltimore. We all get it. You would probably much rather us talk about Nick Bolton, Roquan Smith, Fred Warner. But I truly really like the upside that Queen provides for us from here on out. Sig can attest to this. I don't know where we're at in the Lamar timeline, but what's looking to be a Lamar-less-led team this next weekend that's really scratching for a win. I know they're 9-5 right now, but still they're kind of backsliding just a little bit. Yeah. The Ravens are finding themselves looking at the defense to provide them some numbers. And what does that mean? It means that the Desmond Ridder-led Falcons that threw the ball 26 times to their 39 rushes.
Not great.
Queen should have somewhat of a safe tackle floor, I would believe, this next weekend. Roquan should also, we should note, while also being employed to rush the passer a lot. Queen did have a half of a sack last week as well. So just like Sig has talked about, Baltimore is probably going to be frigid. Desmond Ridder's probably not going to be asked to throw the ball a ton this next week, I wouldn't think. Tyler Algier had 150 yards, I believe. That's pretty good game for him. But what's going to be a cold game, they're going to rush the ball probably 40 times. I think Patrick Queen is going to be the recipient to maybe a double-digit tackle game and also could have a big play exactly like Dre Greenlaw and Willie Gay could possibly have this weekend as well.
Yeah, Sig, it's funny. As we go through these picks here, I'm seeing a lot of the same games coming back and being recycled here, which shows that matchup, it may be a little bit tougher to anticipate on the IDP side of things, but are there certain factors or qualifications beyond what we've mentioned already that you are looking for when it comes to IDP matchups?
Injuries, I think that's something we can also get better at. Understanding injuries on the offensive line, understanding injuries that may change a player's role on defense. And sometimes that's a negative, right? I mean, so that's the thing. While y'all were talking about Patrick Queen, it just made me think about how when Roquan Smith got traded to Baltimore, there was some narrative out there. This is going to be bad for Patrick Queen, right?
Mhm.
He's got better competition for tackles, but it didn't turn out that way. So understanding the interrelated way of these roles depending on each other, and then understanding how injuries can affect that. How does Quinnen Williams being in or out affect the Jets defense and so on? These are a little more subtle things to be able to predict what the effect is going to be, but they are things that affect a matchup on both sides that in hindsight, guys, it's always in hindsight, right? It's always in hindsight. We're like, oh yeah, of course, that makes sense now, that even though we thought because the other linebacker was out that he was going to get a lot more tackle opportunities, actually because the other linebacker was out, he was in coverage more, and he wasn't able, or because the linebacker's out, then a lot more tackles end up at the third level with the safety and so on. So I think these are just, if you're looking for that little bit of an edge, understanding how injuries on both sides of the ball are affecting matchups can lead you on that golden thread of truth that you're looking for.
And exactly like we're talking about scheme busters, I feel like especially this year, we've transitioned from maybe the last couple years, a lot of these teams running out a lot of one linebacker sets. We are rich right now with really good second linebackers in a lot of spots. Not to mention, Devondre Campbell looked really good in Green Bay without Quay Walker. And then Quay Walker was introduced to the defense, and now Quay Walker is a really great linebacker for Dynasty IDP. Look at Ernest Jones. Look at Devin White and Levante David.
Foyce Aluakun.
We could talk forever.
Devin Lloyd / Chad Muma. I mean, we are Addy rich right now in LB2 options. Cody Barton's season has been reinstated. Alex Singleton's hanging around as well. I mean,
hashtag blessed.
Hashtag blessed. Yeah. We've got some good options. We haven't lost a lot of good linebackers. We got back Pete Werner. How does that affect Caden Ellis? We'll see. But yeah, the linebacker, we are rich with options right now, which is amazing to have. So there you go. There are 4 starts that we
Tony Fields, Deion Jones.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know. Who knows what's going on in Cleveland?
Consult the magic 8 ball.
Yes. Just roll the dice while you're at it. But we wanted to pay homage to the Audible. Of course, Sig, you all have your What the Heck Flex picks, the ever popular, ever famous What the Heck Flex. So we are going to do the same. This is probably, for me, one of the hardest things to figure out every week, because you have the full cupboard available to you, and you have to figure out who are you going to plug in. So we'll tee you up first here. Yeah. Your What the Heck Flex pick for Week 16. Who do you got?
Yeah, was it an old Looney Tunes where there was a character like Hasson Chop, right? Am I remembering that correctly?
I think you are.
Yeah, and Hassan Reddick, who's really coming on. And I could have picked Josh Sweat here. Don't you just get the feeling, guys, with Philadelphia, probably it's Gardner Minshew, which is awesome, by the way. Awesome. Makes me want to say Mike Leach, rest in peace. That's a whole other thing. But that you're thinking, oh, Dallas is going to, they can tighten this up, maybe still mathematically alive. And it's going to be the Philly defense. It's going to be the Philly pass rush. Reddick is one of those players who can really turn a game, and he's a hot now. We've seen him go on streaks like this before, guys, where for 2, 3, 4 games he's just constantly in the backfield. We're in the middle of one right now.
It's true, Addy. We are absolutely witnessing a heater from Hassan Reddick, and this I'll touch on it when I mention my pick here. But I love swinging for upside in my flex spot. And Hassan Reddick is one of those great dice rolls to plug in right now.
Yeah, just like, who do you focus on that defensive line? I mean, there's just so much talent. I mean, we know about the middle, but yeah, I mean, now you got Josh Sweat breaking out, Hassan Reddick on the other side of him, and then
Brandon Graham putting up 40
Javon
burgers.
Hargrave.
Yeah, Hargrave.
Robert Quinn, right? Is he going to be back?
He'll be back for the playoffs. He'll be back for the playoffs.
That hasn't worked out, though.
No.
But maybe, you never know. I could see him having an impact.
Did you say Jordan Davis?
Jordan Davis is
Ras man.
Yeah,
the Ras.
Well, then you got Milton Williams too, who's also a
oh yeah,
I like
he's
him
a beast.
a lot.
How do the Steelers ever let Javon Hargrave get away too?
Oh, I know.
He's been a monster this year. Has been for 2 years. He's been a great D-tackle option for a couple years now. So I'll keep us rolling here. My What the Heck Flex pick, I mentioned it a little earlier that I like to swing for upside when it comes to those flex spots. We're in big play leagues, so I do like to look at the matchups where my IDPs can get a sack, TFL, they can be in the backfield disrupting things. Sig already mentioned this a little earlier, that DeShawn Williams is going to get the best Christmas present of all with the Los Angeles Rams and Baker Mayfield. So I am going with my what the heck flex, Baron Browning versus those same Los Angeles Rams. He got banged up a little bit this season, but he's already put up 2 30-point games against bad offensive lines. But since week 11, he has 67% of snaps, 6.19 points per game. So the snaps are there since he has returned from injury. We're just not seeing the production the last 5 weeks, but we talked about it. It's the best possible matchup against the Rams. They give up the second most points per game to opposing defensive ends. And it's easy to see why. Pass blocking grade from PFF ranks 29th in the league. They allow a 21% sack conversion rate, which is the worst in the NFL. And Baron Browning, with those snaps, he is putting pressure on the quarterback, 14.6 pressure rate. Again, the average, 9.2. So Baron Browning, well above average on the pressures. He's getting the playing time. He gets a great matchup against the Rams. So, Addy, I think Baron Browning could be in for maybe 1 sack, some TFLs against this Rams team.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. And this is good news for dynasty managers. I mean, so what that he's not producing? The pressure rates, all the PFF stats, everything looks amazing. The fact that he's getting, 67% of the snaps, you said, that's great. So yeah, this is someone you should absolutely be trying to buy if you're in dynasty leagues.
Yeah, great matchup for Week 16. Great dynasty buy. Addy, let's roll right into your pick here and talk about a replacement. We're getting into. We haven't lost a lot of our beloved linebackers, but potentially a nice injury replacement in Chicago. Who do you got for your what the heck flex?
Yeah, this is only if Jack Sanborn ends up missing this week. If he does, Joe Thomas should be the guy that benefits. He gets Buffalo this week. So after Sanborn exited in week 15, Joe Thomas, the journeyman linebacker, racked up 6 tackles and a sack on just 43 snaps. We've seen this over and over and over again this year. It doesn't matter who the linebacker is, they're going to produce. I expect the same for Thomas if Sanborn misses time. If Sanborn goes, I'll give you another one, Alex Singleton. He's been amazing this year. 124 tackles on just 64% of the defensive snaps.
That is nuts.
That is nuts. Here are his last 3 weeks, though, as far as snap percentages go. 88%, 87%, 74%. So when you have a 20+% tackle rate, you don't have to play 100% of the snaps. Alex plays 7% of the snaps. I think he's a top 15 option.
There you go. Sig, I want to ask you here, as we get, into these playoff rounds, and this is what we've worked all season for, the pressure ratchets up, and we see these profitable roles like what we have with Jack Sanborn. Right. Are you more apt to chase a role like that, or maybe go after a player who is not coming in? We know more about the player who's already playing, who started all season, or will you chase those injury replacements for really, really profitable roles?
I think you have to, right? So Jack Sanborn, we like his potential to have lasting value, but in this case, it seems like the production can travel with the role as long as the players are competent. And then when you add in specifically this week with the likelihood of the high winds in Chicago and Buffalo not really being able to throw downfield, then absolutely. And it's something, it can be troubling, right? I'm speaking more for myself, but I hope I'm not the only one that in a perfect world, talent, ability, acumen would translate to fantasy value. But that's just not the world we live in. And that's why we devote so much time to analysis and talk about it and make these shows and write these articles and do these projections. So absolutely, in this case, this is one where you go ahead and put your chip on the roll. And guys, that's why I've talked about this in previous shows. I've won IDP championships with defenses made up of a lot of waiver wire players from within a week or two of the championship. So I think that really, again, speaks to the importance of role and how we can correlate it with bad teams that don't have a lot to play for, that their defense is going to be on the field a lot.
Yeah, Bobo, we've talked about a lot of different archetypes of players. Sometimes it's the injury fill-in for the profitable role. Sometimes it's the, second linebacker on the team that is actually in the more conducive role for fantasy success. And sometimes it's a player that is coming on as of late, which leads us to your pick from the Detroit Lions. Who you got?
Yeah, exactly like Sig said. If you can get to your sleeper app or MFL or whatever, go check and see if Romeo Okwara is available. He's just now coming off of IR. I talked about him on the podcast with Joey the Tooth last week. But to me, at Carolina this week, he's a great what the heck flex. Okwara has the talent, even though last week the snaps were a little bit limited at 24. But in those 24 snaps, he had 2 sacks and 2 tackles. And these are all 3 things that I, kind of like earlier with Josh Allen, we're talking about. Play your studs, play matchups that you like, and start players on teams fighting for a chance to dance. That is pretty much the epitome of the Detroit Lions right now, the Dan Campbell-led Detroit Lions. But I will also say, I'm going to give you a little – this is something I thought about on the way here that I kind of wanted to mention also. If you're a huge underdog, your defensive back are terrible, the guy ahead of you has Justin Jefferson and not Jonathan Taylor, whoever. You got a bunch of great players rolling out, Kenny Gainwell and Romeo Dobbs. Look to see if your league actually has return yards being scored, because you could start Dallas Flowers, Keyshawn Nixon, and let's bring this thing all the way around to a guy that Sig mentioned way back when, in Marcus Jones. These guys are averaging anywhere between 20 to 30 points a game, pretty much just based off of kick and punt returns. They may play a couple of defense snaps, but if you can get those in your league, and if you're an underdog, those are the type of guys that I'm looking to unseed the bigger seeded 1s and 2 seeds this week.
Absolutely. Sometimes you got to pull out a Hail Mary if you want to take down the big dog. This Bobby's pick here is indicative of something that we're trying to sort and find the signal through noise. One of the things I like to do and talk about it on this show is listening to kind of the normie NFL analysis podcast. Anytime they mention a defensive player, it makes my ears perk up. It makes me think, is this guy, is he primed for takeoff here? With IDP production, and Romeo Okwara was a dude who got a lot of love on last week's analysis. All the podcasts I listened to talking this guy up. Lions are surging. It seems like a good confluence of factors to make Okwara a what the heck flex.
Yeah, and if the Lions offense can do what it's been doing, which is being very efficient. Remember, they got stopped on 4 straight runs at inside the 5 on the first drive last week, or they would have gotten off to a better lead. Jared Goff underthrew Jamison Williams, who was wide open for a deep ball, or they could have actually made that a more lopsided game. But this game against Carolina this week, Sam Darnold, again, in your mind's eye, how often have you seen Sam Darnold be the guy who's the deer in the headlights, right? If the game script puts Sam Darnold in the crosshairs, the Lions are going to get home. And the other thing that we've got to mention is, remember, the Lions defense, from a fantasy perspective, earlier this season, you were targeting them. You were playing your running backs against them. You were playing your wide receivers, your quarterbacks against them. No longer. This defense has come together. And Aaron Glenn, he may not be the defensive coordinator for much longer. He may be a head coach somewhere next year. These players are really coming together. And I think that this is also a fun, I just wanted to do a little PSA here. Like for me, because, the Steelers, I guess they're trying to keep Mike Tomlin from having a losing season or something, but come on. The Lions are a really fun story this year. And the Lions are a team that I think, I don't want to impugn anybody, but I think if you're a fan of football, you're a fan of this team. Right? If you're a fan of football, you're a fan of Dan Campbell. And also, just for these can I just take a moment out also to say one of the things I thought that was really this year signified: Lions, Bears, Jets, right? All these teams that have been suffering for so long with their teams. And the Jags now. And I know the Jags were just a play away from the Super Bowl only about 5 years ago. It wasn't that long ago. But I see people that keep their faith in their team and stay emotionally vulnerable. I mean, the funny thing about Lions fans, guys, have you ever met any Lions fans? No, because you only meet former Lions fans.
It's true.
You meet people who say, well, I was a Lions fan for a really long time. So I'd like to see the Lions come in, build a lead in this game. Carolina's still only a game out of first. So, You better not. Carolina's still got a chance for the dance too. But I think that counting on this Detroit team to really click on both sides of the ball. And also, this isn't going to be a weather game. This isn't going to be a game with wind. So that's another thing. I think, hey, the Carolina might not be able to go into a shell in this one that would set up Okwara, Aiden Hutchinson for some big opportunities.
Yeah, Addy. We like when the playoffs roll around for the NFL. You like to see fun teams get in. Yeah. And who's more fun than the Detroit Lions right now?
And who are all these guys? James Houston, John
I know. James Houston's everywhere. Every time you look up, he's getting a sack.
True.
The corners are playing well. Yep. Who's that fun corner?
Jerry Jacobs.
Jerry Jacobs.
Yes.
Kirby Joseph.
It's a fun team.
It's a fun, weird team. Who are any of these guys?
Yeah, it's a team of cast-offs and misfits led by a guy who'd probably be the bad favorite in the NFL Hunger Games amongst head coaches.
Yeah.
We'd know he'd at least take off a couple kneecaps before they took him out. But I'm rooting for the Lions to get in because, and this is a little plug, a little PSA we'll say here, NFL playoff fantasy football is so much fun. Sig, I know you guys do some stuff over at Footballguys.
Yeah.
Encourage folks to check that out. We'll be talking about best IDP, options for the playoff teams that make it in. And Addy, there could be some fun options from this Lions team if they make it in on both sides of the ball.
Sig's the big reason why we do it. I think Sig's the big reason why we do the IDP content for it. Sig handles all the offensive side for playoff fantasy, and then I've been doing the IDP stuff for our site.
Speak to it, Sig. The playoff challenge you guys do, I think it's a long-running thing that you guys have done.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's I think we do a Footballguys version. I know there's FFPC playoff challenge. And then there's just good old playoff fantasy football. And just really quick, because this is old school, guys. We're getting back to stuff that you can just still to this day score with just paper and pencil, right? So people use that stuff anymore. But playoff fantasy football is a blast. And I'll just actually do a plug here because I do rankings for playoff fantasy drafts. I also do my perfect FFPC PC playoff challenge entry. And that's one where you pick a player, basically. The challenge is you pick one player from all teams, but I guess now with 14 teams, like all teams but 4. So you can only pick one player per team, and there's some teams that you don't pick players from, and you make a lineup out of them, and it's just however many points you score throughout the playoffs. So in both versions, the idea is it's not just the player you're weighting; it's the player times number of games you expect that player to play. So really, you're also prognosticating how far teams are going to make it into the playoffs. And you can get into some fun stuff where you have, these two teams are playing in the first round, so I know I'll advance someone at this position to the second round and stuff like that. But I will bring this up that if this is something new to you, what's great about these playoff fantasy leagues, you can do it with 6 people. Okay, so you only need 5 other people that are interested. You can do a good old during the week. I remember from the days I used to work in an office, guys, is like Monday or before the playoffs start, you start the draft through email or whatever, and then you can do a nice load draft. And by the time the playoff games start that week, everyone's got their team together. And I will do the actual plug here and say, Footballguys has changed over to you get a subscription for a year. Okay, so if you are interested in this, because I also give the details on how to set up a league, like the rules and like that, you will be subscribed for 365 days. So if you sign up now, you're going to get all the off season, all season next year, all the stuff that you're drafting, and just about everything through the regular season next year. It's a lot of fun. It takes me back to the roots of fantasy football. But it's not just about the players. It's about predicting who wins the Super Bowl. And it's really fun to see how the points pile up and see what kind of outs you have. And it's absolutely something when the season's over and you feel like you're wanting more. And not just DFS, not just that quick burn of DFS. Because much like typical fantasy football, you do your draft, you have all your assumptions, you make all these decisions in the road, and then it takes a little while. There's a little bit of suspense. That's what I mean, boy.
Yeah, Eddie, he mentioned doing the scoring with pencil and paper. We were essentially doing that for about the first 7 or 8 years of our long-running playoff league.
It was a big reason why I was whipping all y'all's asses too.
Yeah.
Looking for a platform that will actually support playoff fantasy with IDP Fantrax we switched over last year, and it went surprisingly well. But we also have a draft template. If you'd like to do it, we have a Google spreadsheet we would be happy to share with you all if you want the kind of roster construction and how you put those teams together. So check it out. Just because the fantasy football regular season and playoffs are over doesn't mean that the fantasy experience has to stop. So check it out. We'll be doing some content. I know Sig and Football Guys will as well. So Sig, we always like to cue you up here at the end.
Yeah.
Fantasy semifinals. The floor is yours, good sir. What advice would you have for IDP managers out there?
Set your lineups and then go hang out with your families or the people you love and check back in and see the box scores after, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's great too if you have family that loves to watch football and things like that. I'm not trying to disparage football, but I do think that, I mean, really, guys, what I want to talk about, since this is the last time I'm going to get to join you all this year, but I know there's more in the future, I'm sure. I want to virtually be in the shed as often as possible. That it is just a joy to do. I do a lot of shows with a lot of people, guys, and y'all, your camaraderie, your enthusiasm, your professionalism, and just the way that you show not just the love of football and fantasy football, but getting to do the show with each other and getting to be part of a team that y'all have created something really great that I think stands for the best of not just our community, but especially the quote unquote content creators in our community. And to me, it's a very high compliment that y'all would want me or think it's something to look forward to have me on the show, because I know I look forward to being in the shed with y'all.
Well, I think that's the best Christmas present I'm going to get all year, Addy. That's
Yeah,
Sig's about to
getting a little dusty in here.
I was going to say, is there some dust in the shed? Sig, that's incredibly kind. Thank you. This was something that we put together in the off season, and when we thought about folks that we wanted to collab with, you were at the top of the list. So thank you kindly, sir, from the bottom of our hearts for doing this show with us. These 4 episodes have been a blast, Bubbo. I know I have looked forward to these episodes each time we've gotten together.
Yeah, I'm not crying. You're crying.
We're all crying. It's okay. We're dads. Our emotions are shot. It's totally fine. So yeah, I like that advice. Set your lineups. Go have fun. Don't be compulsively checking your phone on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Try to enjoy the holidays, and hopefully with some of these picks that we rolled out here, these 16 players will help you guys get into the championship round. But make sure you're following the Audible, the podcast that Sig does with Cecil Lammy. Fantastic. Obviously, a lot of great other shows in that feed as well. Check out the YouTube channel. Sig, you guys are pumping out some great content over there. So make sure you're checking out all those podcasts. We will be back next Thursday, December 29th, doing a championship preview with John Macri. So be sure to check us out as well. The IDP Show, theidpshow.com, and we're over on YouTube as well. As Sig mentioned, this may be the end of this particular collab, but it's not the end of the road. We will have you back in the virtual Socheck anytime that you would like to join us, Sig, and maybe, just maybe in 2023, we can get you in the actual Socheck here in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Yeah, that's we got life goals, and it's beautiful, and I appreciate that, and hopefully, you have some fun, you overeat, you overindulge, and you go back and you check and you see what presents are under your fantasy Christmas tree. But by the end of it, you think, well, whether I won or lost, I'm still a winner because of the great people you have in your life.
That's right, Addy. So
hey, we got to have you come back for the Bloom 100. That's for sure.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, the countdown.
That's a must.
Yeah.
The countdown is on. Yeah, especially once the calendar turns over to 2023. A lot of those dynasty leagues going to be thinking about the rookie draft. So we will have you back on, good sir, to talk about the Bloom 100. But until then, good luck this week, y'all. We hope to see you back here next week for championship weekend with something to play for. But either way, good luck this weekend. Make sure to check out the Audible, check out Football Guys and the IDP Show. And until next week, Merry Christmas. We'll see y'all soon.
It's when I go home, everything's at risk. Welcome to something new. It's the IDP Blitz. When I go home, everything's at risk. Welcome to something new. It's the IDP Blitz.